Welcome to the Montrose Manor How To podcast series. In this series, you will learn more about treatment of eating disorders and how to support your loved one, friend, family member, or child in transitioning back home after their treatment at Montrose Manor. It helps to provide an understanding of the skills, tools, and processes that they go to, and also give you guidelines and practical strategies to implement in the transition home. The podcast is recorded by the Montrose Manor therapeutic team, and the voices you will hear are those of Madeleine van den Berg, occupational therapist, Firdaus Ahmad, occupational therapist, Lisha Mostert, registered counsellor, Megan McCall, clinical psychologist, and Diane Iverson, the dietitian. We hope that you enjoy the recording. Please, if you have any questions or any follow-up processes, please join our parent support group or email one of the therapists to guide and direct you. Welcome everyone to our Montrose Manor podcast on eating disorders. Today I am here with Lisha, Diane, and Firdaus, and we are speaking about how to manage festivities and events for your client or loved one with an eating disorder. Hello guys.
Hi, nice to be here.
Oh, lovely. We're speaking about festivities and events. What kind of things are we speaking about?
Sure, I'm just thinking that we need to obviously be mindful when a client is coming out of treatment, that having a big group of people, having a big family gathering can be quite overwhelming. So I think just needing to be mindful of that, and just everything that sort of encompasses, from the food, from the amount of people asking where you've been all this time. Just there's a lot to think about, and I think a lot to speak about in terms of how to support your loved one going into these types of gatherings.
It's quite complicated because I think often we haven't celebrated Christmas, Eid, birthdays in such a long time because of the illness, and as a family you're so happy to have your child back or your loved one back and in recovery. There's almost a need to have a celebration. What are the obstacles? Why are we not encouraging this?
I also think, I just want to add to that, I think what also is hard is that oftentimes I think the extended families haven't necessarily been involved in the whole treatment of the client, usually more the immediate family. So now also there's a lot of sort of unrealistic expectations that I find that when the client is now back home, the extended family thinks, but now you're fixed. Now everything is great. So they almost don't necessarily maybe have the sensitivity or the understanding that the eating disorder and those thoughts it hasn't just disappeared. So I think that's also helpful for families to be aware of that. And then I guess it's, if we go into sort of the practicalities in terms of number of people, just speaking to the client in terms of what they're comfortable with, how many people, who are they comfortable with sort of having there, and also just being the person that they can touch base with, having like a support system.
I think on that's when I always say to a client, having a support buddy within the family, because it does help. That person's usually there to be able to be like, okay, you can get through this without the overwhelming of everyone, like, how are you doing? Oh my God, you're back. And that can be, all those questions can really just make you go into your head. So I think having that support buddy, and just, I always just say, have a look, like where you just give them that eye nod, and it helps them to actually come and sit with you and just distract you from everything, the overwhelming people as well.
I would suggest not having a welcome home party. Don't do anything in the first week or two when you leave Montrose. Rather just settle in at home, get back into the meal plan at home, see what's working, what's not working, and then perhaps after 2 weeks or so, then say, okay, I'm ready for a small gathering of close family and friends. Keep it simple. Maybe there is a birthday that you've missed or something like that. Just limit the number of people, but definitely nothing in the first week or two post-discharge.
So there's almost like two thoughts for me here, is that, so on the one hand you're saying like, let's not do a big gathering and all of that just after treatment, which makes a lot of sense, because we really want to protect the client, and maybe there's something there about about asking what would help for you, what would be a nice event to do. What about a little bit further on in recovery? I've been home for 3 or 4 months, and now it's a religious celebration or a birthday, or a 60th birthday of a parent or a grandparent. Does the rules change a little bit further on in recovery?
Sure, I think it also depends on where the client is at in their recovery. And I mean, that's going to look different for different people. But I think just having open conversations and being able to just sort of create individual support, like make it based on the client. But I think that's also where we can speak maybe a bit about the food. I think having, especially early in recovery, having a braai where the timing of the meal is a bit unpredictable, or having a buffet and not necessarily a plated meal, that can feel a bit overwhelming. So bearing that in mind, and then also timing, which then also leads to sort of needing a bit of flexibility.
I think sticking to the meal plan, 3 meals, 3 snacks, that's not negotiable, but the timing could be a little bit more flexible. You know, if you need to, maybe you're going to do a lunch that's going to start a little bit later, then bring the afternoon snack forward, you know, and then have the lunch a little bit later. That can often work quite well. So being a little bit more flexible with the timing is usually fine. I don't usually recommend buffet style meals. That can be quite triggering or quite overwhelming for the client. It usually we suggest something plated. Maybe you're going out for a lunch, you can just order a meal, and if it dessert needs to be included, then you can share a dessert with your family member. But I definitely wouldn't suggest like a 3-course meal or a buffet. That can often be quite overwhelming, even if the client is in good recovery.
Mm-hmm. I also just want to clarify what you mean by bringing the snack forward. Is, for example, you'd have breakfast, early snack, and then have another snack, and then have, for example, the lunch that's a little bit later.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So being a little bit flexible, but still having 3 meals, 3 snacks. Mm.
I like what you guys are speaking about, the flexibility, which is a very difficult thing for someone with an eating disorder to have flexibility. And then we're thinking about holidays and festive events, and they are often very flexible. There's often very little structural routine to a day. Exactly what you say. You plan to have the fire ready and the food ready by 3, but then people arrive late. Where is that balance between being flexible but still following the meal plan, or like what you're speaking about for those, like having a buddy to support you? How do we as a family support a client to be flexible but yet provide safety through planning?
Well, I'm also thinking about just how black and white these clients typically are in their thinking, how it is, I need to have everything perfect or everything is wrong and this is bad. So I think looking at what is my intention. Is my intention, okay, I can actually get away with this. No one's going to know that I didn't have this snack. Then that's alarm bells. Or is it my intention is that, it's more just it didn't work out that way, and I do want to have all my meals and all my snacks. I think communicating, so sharing with loved ones what I'm needing. Also, I think with snacks, that's where we also encourage clients to have like a snack box. So having snacks where you can access them easily, especially if you're going into an environment like this, is also helpful.
So would you say it's then more of the planning ahead of time and knowing like, okay, if I'm not going to be able to have lunch this time, at least I have this backup sort of thing.
Yeah.
Because I think that very often the clients are extremely rigid. They just like, the minute I can't do this now, oh my God, and they start thinking worst case scenario. So I think sometimes it helps having the family reassure them, like, okay, so this happened, you had a snack nonetheless, let's move past it, and it's not actually a bad thing.
Yeah.
If it's an adolescent, I also suggest that the parent who is with the client to just plates for the adolescent. It can be overwhelming. Rather just plate for them, especially if you've now gone out and it ends up being a buffet style, plate for the adolescent and let them sit down and enjoy the meal. Don't even let them go up to the buffet table. It's just not going to work. So just take control. as the parent.
Because I think that's where for that client, I think what we often don't understand is for that client it is how much am I allowed to have, what is too much, what is too little. It's an overwhelming amount of choices, that all of that can feel incredibly overwhelming if you're already in an environment with lots of people. There's a lot of stimulation, a lot going on. So I think just that can then just be additional stress. So if we can help them with that, obviously that's ideal.
And I imagine also that with the adult client, the buddy system can be helpful there. That a client or a loved one can go to the buddy and say, did I portion correctly? Is this enough? That person can be both a food support, but also in a way an emotional support. So you're speaking a lot about people that will be at these events. And we know family gatherings are not always easy to deal with, not for people with. So you guys are speaking a lot about family members being there, and we know that family members and family gatherings can be very overwhelming for even people without an eating disorder. How do you deal with questions about your eating disorder, or maybe comments about, oh, you look so healthy, or why are you eating this, or why are you not having more cake, or have more cake? How do we deal with that as a family?
Sure, and I think that's always going to be a topic that comes up. I think everyone that comes out of recovery, I think it's hard for people to not make comments on, oh, you look so healthy, oh, you look so much better. And I think immediately for someone with an eating disorder, it goes to, okay, that means I've gained weight. Okay, that's a bad thing. But I think it's difficult for people to not make, I think it's quite, it's just human nature to make comments about that. But I think trying to educate people on how to navigate these situations and what is quite difficult for you to hear, what is quite uncomfortable. We also then go into this idea of yellow talk, where and I also always tell sort of people at Montrose that you are here, you're with everyone that understands the eating disorder, everyone gets it and everyone speaks the same language. Now you go out, or I almost want to say into the real world, and there's people don't know, they haven't been in treatment for the weeks, the amount of time that you have. So I think just educating them on that, also having patience with them, because often people just don't know. So they are going to say things that can be quite triggering. I also think this is where maybe parents can help ahead of time, and parents can maybe have conversations with the extended family on, and just educating them on what they've also learned, like what is yellow talk, what to say, what not to say. For example, saying, I'm so happy that you're back, we're really happy to have you here, as opposed to, oh, you look so much better. We also try to focus more on you look much happier, more of sort of the happiness and that, as opposed to physical appearance, trying to distinguish between that.
I think it's also important in this regard for the client to be able to vocalize, like, and enforce boundaries even, and like, this is not appropriate for my recovery, and being able to say like, oh, I find this triggering, because then it creates that awareness, like you say, also to educate the families. But I think it shouldn't also necessarily just be on the client, but it is also that place for them to learn to understand that this is your safe space, as family usually is. So start enforcing boundaries there, because once you leave that safe family bubble, then you kind of know, okay, I need to then speak about my boundaries more, because people don't really understand.
Mm-hmm. I also think often parents will say, okay, but this is not the real world. In the real world, you are constantly going to be triggered and people are constantly going to make comments. And what I often say to parents is that's exactly why we need to create a bit of safety and support with the immediate family, because they are going to go out there and get these comments all the time. So creating a bit of safety and support with the immediate family, that's what we can control. So helping them, supporting them in that way, it really, it means a lot to them. It's really valuable for their recovery.
I guess it's quite a bit about compassion and empathy, realizing that if someone is coming out of the clinic and has done a full process and are currently eating better and feeling better about themselves, knowing that life will still be tough, and they still need support and love, and that a big meal or a lot of people, specifically events centered around food, might really be difficult and triggering to deal with, and that as a family we can just have a little bit more compassion and empathy for them. A lot of these family gatherings do really center around food. What do you guys recommend? Is there a possibility of creating other rituals, other traditions so that these events can be less food focused?
I think ideally so. I mean, I think that it's interesting if you start just realizing, like you say, how much of our occasions, our festivities is centered around food. And for someone struggling with an eating disorder, just how triggering those can be. So I think trying to create new rituals and occasions can be really valuable. Obviously, I think it's tricky because, for example, I think a lot of families will meet up. Okay, we're going to go for a long walk before our breakfast, and then we're going to have breakfast together, and then it almost all very quickly starts centering around the food. But I guess, and I think also parents, you don't have to have all the answers, but I think bringing your child into this and saying, or your loved one into this and saying, what do you think this could look like? What would be helpful? How can we create a new routine or a new ritual or occasion that's not just centered around the food, and brainstorming together? Just opening that door, I think, is very helpful.
And just starting small, rather do a snack out or invite 2 or 3 people around for tea and a snack. See how that goes first. If that goes well, then you could maybe try a lunch or a meal at home with friends and family, or go out for a lunch. Just rather start small and then work your way up to perhaps something a little bit bigger.
And maybe something like centering it around a gratitude session, or maybe gift giving, or maybe sharing experiences or highs and lows. I'm thinking about an end of year or a birthday, like maybe an affirmation session, or let's say what we love about this person, rather than making the cake the focus of the event. The one thing that I also want to check in with you guys is, at these events, the loved one is there and they are struggling. What do you recommend for that moment of panic when they are standing in front of the buffet, or when the aunt has said something inappropriate? Can the client take a break? How do we help them in the moment if there is distress?
I think that's something we speak about a lot in their time at Montrose. We speak a lot about sort of which skills they can use, and we often speak about avoidance. We speak about playing a game around the dinner table, for example, or distracting yourself. I think it's also more than fine for the loved one to say, actually, I need a little bit of time. Go and splash my face with water, come back. Again, like Fido said earlier, having sort of a loved one that knows that this is hard for me, that I can touch base with. And I think just being honest and also being gentle with yourself and your own expectations. I find that so often people, again, think this has to be perfect and this has to go really well, otherwise this whole day was terrible. And just loosening some of those expectations, and then using your skills, using your tools, whatever that is, to calm down. I need to actually go outside, I need to spend time in nature, I need to do my grounding, my breathing exercise, just the tools that they have learned here, and finding what works for them, but definitely implementing those when they're feeling overwhelmed.
This sounds very valuable. Let's end with I'm going to ask each one of you for your singular best tip for managing festivities and events. For those, what's your single tip that you would give families and clients with eating disorders?
My main thing that came to my mind immediately was, think about the fun. The fun of the people, the fun of getting to just be with people you haven't seen and catching up, just be in the present moment and think of the fun.
Diane, what is your tip?
I think as the dietitian, it's always stick to the meal plan. And maybe just not to set too high expectations. It probably is going to go wrong in the beginning. So just keep it small, keep it intimate, maybe start with something at home rather than going out for a meal. And then always just to chat about it after the meal. Never make a big scene at the meal time, rather process it afterwards.
I think for mine sort of ties into that with just being gentle. Be gentle with yourself, be gentle with those around you. This is going to be messy, and sort of not going into that black and white of now it's all terrible. Just be gentle.
Thank you so much, guys. You were listening to the Montrose Manor team as we help and guide you through supporting your loved one with an eating disorder. There are more podcasts, and we are very excited to share more of this with you. Have a lovely rest of your day.
Bye.